Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. I'm Steven Reyes, Head Technician at Bellator CyberGuard. In this video, we'll talk a little bit about cloud security and some of the best practices if you're working in a cloud environment. I often hear people say, oh, well, I work in a cloud environment, all of my data is stored in the cloud. I don't store any sensitive data on my computer or my hard drive at all, so I don't really need any sophisticated security on my device because I do everything in the cloud. And that's kind of misleading and inaccurate, and that's kind of the point of this video. I want to kind of point out what security you should still have and why, and which some of the settings you should be having enabled in the cloud software. So let's get into it. Within a lot of the cloud software, there are different permissions, usually role-based permissions that you can assign to different users. And then the user is assigned a role, and that role has different permissions associated to it. So this is good for two reasons, and it is something we should be using for two reasons. One, to delegate work. Obviously, it makes things easier if we have assigned roles, and then those roles have only access to the things that the user that's assigned that role needs access to do their job. In addition to that, these role permissions will only grant access to the data that they should be seeing and nothing more, right? So this brings up the principle of least privilege. So this principle essentially refers to having the least amount of access necessary to do your job. And really the idea is that it's always better to have too little access and need to request additional access rather than have too much access and access to data you don't necessarily need to be seeing or have available to you. So when you're designing these permissions, really the idea is to set them up so that the roles that people are assigned to will only have access to the data that they need to do their job and nothing more. And then obviously you should probably have a process in place to request additional access in the case that they need access to more data. Okay, next, access controls. So obviously working in these cloud environments, they are secure in a lot of ways, right? You don't have to worry about someone getting in there and stealing that data in most cases. You know, they have significant security, a lot of these providers. That being said, if you have login access, then whoever has that login access will be able to access whatever data is there. So we want to make sure that we're using strong passwords. When I say strong passwords, I mean really 12 characters at least, using uppercase and lowercase letters, using numbers, special characters. And in addition to that, changing the password at least 90 days is a good rule of thumb. In addition to the username and password, we should be using 2FA in one form or another. So maybe when you log in, then a code gets texted to your cell phone and you enter that code and then you log in. Or you can use biometrics, or a lot of the time people use authenticator apps today. So you have an application on your phone that has a code that changes every 60 seconds. So when you log in, you enter the code that's currently displayed there, and that logs you in. Some sort of second factor of authentication in addition to your username and password. Lastly, employee training. So employees should be trained on phishing and just access control things and using the 2FA, using strong passwords, changing their passwords at least every 90 days. Mostly phishing and social engineering, though, is very important, because social engineering, if you haven't seen in our other video, we talk about social engineering a lot, is associated to 90+% of breaches. It usually starts with some sort of social engineering, maybe a phishing email asking for credentials, and it seems like someone you can trust, and they fill out a form, or maybe they click an attachment and that attachment contains malware, and then that's installed on their device by opening this attachment that was sent via email. So just training employees on what to be aware of as far as phishing and social engineering goes, as well as the best practices of strong passwords and how to use 2FA. Lastly, in addition to having your best practices that we talked about, as far as real security programs go and network security, we should be using a sophisticated antivirus, ideally endpoint detection and response. Really, the difference between legacy antivirus or regular antivirus being McAfee and Sophos and Norton, as opposed to EDR or endpoint detection response, is that the legacy antivirus will rely on a library of known signatures and known viruses, malware, whereas the endpoint detection and response will look at the actual processes going on the device, and if it determines something is malicious, then it will stop it from executing. This is important because if you think about cloud security and these cloud softwares, they're essentially like having a safe in your home office, right? So that's great. If you have a safe in your home office and all your sensitive data is stored in there, and that's under lock and key, right? And maybe that's in a locked office in your locked home. That's wonderful, right? But think if someone has access to your home, right? So let's say your front door is open and then your office door is open, then they can just kind of sit in the corner, right? Let's pretend it's like an invisible man, some invisible malware, right? And he just stands in the corner and waits for you to open the safe. Then as soon as you open the safe, he's kind of looking over your shoulder, walks right past you because he's invisible, right? And sees everything that's there. This might seem kind of silly, but it's really not, right? This is essentially what like a keylogger or some pretty basic malware can do, right? It can record your screen. It can capture the things you enter on your device and be there when you access your cloud security because it's watching everything that's going on your device. And this can all be hidden kind of in the background. So this isn't to scare you, right? But this is to kind of shut down the idea of, oh, I work in a cloud environment, so I have enough security, right? We still need hardware security as well that's looking and will detect some sort of software like the invisible man running in the background. In addition to that, network security is very important. Use a VPN. A lot of these cloud security works on virtual networks. That's great. Using a VPN on top of that is wonderful. And having a well-configured firewall, not leaving ports open. Essentially, right, if you're unfamiliar with how to configure your firewall, just make sure that you're getting it from a provider that kind of knows what your needs are and will configure it for you. But that's everything for this video. Thank you guys for watching. I mentioned some of the other videos like social engineering, and there's other things. There's a deeper video on antivirus and endpoint detection response. Some of the Security 6 videos, there's a whole Security 6 series on our channel as well. So check out some of those videos, and thanks for watching.